I'm surprised that someone that can articulate a very well thought out criticism of the Democratic establishment would then go to sleep and not offer the same criticism of Trump. And the idea that all black people are united and that they should all vote the same is strange. We don't hold any other group accountable to that, like to that standard. We don't expect every single white person to vote the same, or every single even Latino, even though we want to pretend like all Latinos should vote Democrat. The reality is that we understand that there's a lot of Republicans. So same thing for black people. There's a lot of in them that are wealthy, that want lower taxes, that in terms of their ideology, they lean more toward the Republicans. And if they want to vote that way, then let them, right?
All right, you are listening to the Brown Perspective. I'm one of your hosts, Eduardo, and I'm here with your other host, the limo riding, high flying, baby kissing, coding, Bugatti car driving, RO.
All of that and more.
That's right. I was trying to give you your best wrestling introduction.
Yeah, right.
Give credit to Bad Bunny. That was my way of including Bad Bunny in this episode, because one of his really good videos has Ric Flair. So, he was into wrestling like so many of
Yeah.
us as young Latinos who thought that wrestling was real.
As soon as
At
you
least I did.
mentioned, yeah, as soon as you mentioned Ric Flair, you give away the decade that you came of age, early
Well,
'90s.
yeah, but that's the thing. I really didn't know Ric Flair. I knew, Macho Man, Razor Ramon, The Undertaker, some of those. So actually, I think I came just as there was that new generation of wrestlers. And but obviously that introduction in that sport, right? So I think so many of us grow with that as part of our lives, and then I guess you kind of grow out of it, and some people don't. But in any case, the introductions, the qualities, because it's like a novela for men and women, but mostly for men.
Yeah, got me thinking about the good old days with the wrestling, and then early '90s we had the Spanish, the Mexican wrestling as well, the Triple
Oh,
A.
really? That
Yeah,
must have been a California thing, or Los Angeles thing, because I wasn't exposed to Mexican wrestlers until much later in life, probably in college.
yeah. Here in Southern California, it was big, and every now and then you had wrestlers from WWF crossover, and they would end up working in the Mexican wrestling.
Hmm.
That those were good times. Jake the Snake Roberts. You had Conan came from the Mexican league, and then also that's where Eddie Guerrero came from. So a lot of people that became familiar with Eddie Guerrero, we used to back in the early '90s, we used to see him all the time because he would come out in the Mexican league, and then eventually he's crossed over to the U.S.
Right now is a good time to transition to the best wrestling match that we have right now, which is the elections. We have wrestling happening at the top, from Trump to Biden, all the way down the ticket at the local level. So this is where things get interesting. And just following up on the conversation that we had last week, really appreciating the resources that in the conversation that we had about how to become informed citizens, because it took me a while after a conversation to do additional research on the propositions, but also on the candidates. I think doing the research on the candidate level takes time, because at the local level you have multiple candidates and you want to kind of understand who's running and what's happening. And obviously those are things that you really don't, the media doesn't cover as much. So you kind of have to do more research if you're not already plugged in.
Yeah, and we alluded to that in last week's episode that it did take a good amount of time to do that research, and that's why we provided those resources. Hopefully, those that listen to the podcast, they were able to take advantage of those two resources. They were LA Forward and then the California Progressive Guide. I found that those two resources were gave me most of the background that I needed. But there's other resources that we didn't share last time that we can share. These are more nationwide. If people outside of California want to find out who's running and what's on the ballots, then Ballotpedia is a good resource. And then this one, I just found out about today. I didn't know about this one, so thanks Eduardo for bringing it to my attention. The
Welcome.
League of Women Voters also provides good information. Elections on Tuesday, so don't procrastinate too much. Otherwise, you'll be
Yes.
at the ballot box flipping a coin or voting for someone just because you like the way their last name sounds or because it sounds Hispanic or just based on party affiliation.
Yeah. And that's you kind of revert back to the tribes or what things that you're familiar with.
Yeah. I know you had a topic that you wanted to also discuss in addition to that. Did you still want to talk about any of the particular candidates that are running or the ballots, or did we want to move on to Chingo Bling, who's also in the news because of things going on with this election cycle?
Now let's talk about Chingo Bling and the his take on what's going on right now, because I think it's just interesting to see how media personalities. I know we talked about Ice Cube getting some flack a couple of weeks ago, but I think part of what triggered this was also Little Wayne.
Lil
I
Wayne,
guess
right?
coming Little Wayne right there, the American rapper, basically, supporting the Trump administration, and again, it kind of gets to this question of what's how should we feel about celebrities having their own political views? How influential are they? And also, can we respect a difference of opinion for people who are at that level, right? Or just in general, right? How tolerant are we with people who maybe we love and like, but maybe decide to do the wrong thing politically, or a different thing politically?
I didn't think anyone took Lil Wayne seriously. Now we're going to pretend like his decisions matter.
Damn, cold de reo.
and
No,
I'm not
what?
as I sorry. I knew about 50 Cent and Ice Cube. Hadn't heard about Lil Wayne. Now this headline here in CNS says that he met with Trump and praised the president's plan for Black Americans. Is Did he also endorse the president and say that he was going to vote for him, or is this the extent of it? Do you know?
I do not know actually, so we
Okay.
can find out together.
Okay, what does this say? Lil Wayne revealed the meeting that he met with Trump. He says, just had a great meeting with real Donald Trump, President of the United States. Besides what he's done so far with criminal reform, the Platinum Plan is going to give the
Oh,
community real ownership. He listens to what we had to say today and assured he will and can get it done. If that's it, that's all he tweeted. I can see how this is enough to get people to.
it's a real endorsement. I mean, this is in addition, besides the criminal reforms that he has done, the Platinum Plan, which is apparently what the Trump administration is calling their plan with with the Black community, and then I think is going to give communities real ownership. I think that's to me that's a pretty endorsing statement.
Yeah, I was going to say it's not an official one where he comes out and
Yeah.
says that I am behind this president and I'm going to vote for him. But this is he is putting out there that he is aligned with the president and that he does like what the president is doing. So yeah, an unofficial endorsement, similar to Ice Cube's, although Ice Cube was less than this because Ice Cube just had a meeting and Ice Cube did say that he was meeting with both candidates. 50 Cent though was an actual endorsement where he came out and said, "Screw this, if Biden wins, my taxes are going to go up this much in New York, so I'm voting for Trump." I don't even care if he hates black people.
Wow.
Oh, you didn't see that?
Well, I hadn't seen the exchange, but the reason I know about it is because his former girlfriend Chesley, is it Chelsea? I always forget her name, but she was on the Daily Show with Trevor Noah, and she kind of talked about how she talked to 50 Cent about what he had tweeted and what he was, and I guess he was just being a provocateur, and that he's now planning to vote for Biden, but he does bring up the point of some people care more about their financial interests than anything else.
Exactly, and this goes back to to one of my themes that I always try to speak out on, and that people really a lot of the times they divide themselves based on class and wealth. And it's not surprising at all that a wealthy African American would be anti-democrat if it means that he's going to pay less in taxes. And the
Mm-hmm.
idea that all black people are united and that they should all vote the same is strange. We don't hold any other group accountable to that, like to that standard. We don't expect every single white person to vote the same, or every single even Latino. Even though we want to pretend like all Latinos should vote Democrat, the reality is that we understand that there's a lot of Republicans. So same thing for black people. There's a lot of in them that are wealthy, that want lower taxes, that in terms of their ideology, they lean more toward the Republicans, and if they want to vote that way, then let them, right?
Yeah.
It's their call, really. Nothing wrong with it, and
And I
uh,
guess the point that I'll make is, yeah, he might not be as politically involved as um, Ice Cube or even 50, but I think he does have an audience, right? And people who do listen to him, and maybe people who are not as plugged in with what's going on around the election. So, it could be like, oh, wow, well, Lil Wayne said he's for this person, so I'm going to go ahead and give that person a shot. So, he does have an audience and could influence some people, depending on who is not already well informed politically.
yeah. The other thing to this is when I see news like this, I just think that this is part of the game. This is
Hmm.
part of how it is that they want people to be distracted. Uh, People getting mad at each other because someone's voting Republican, or someone else yelling at each other because they're voting Democrat. It doesn't matter. You're still voting for one of the two. No one's really talking about it, not voting for either of them. I mean, the
Hmm.
truth is, even if Lil Wayne endorsed here, even if he comes out and he says, I'm voting for Trump, and then he backs Trump's policy here for the Platinum Plan, and what was the other one, the
Sure.
America First plan. Like, Trump's not gonna do much for black people. He's just trying to get support right now. Once either Trump or Biden wins the election, the African American community is not going to see significant change with either candidate. So as long as the conversation is about voting for Biden or voting for Trump, that's the way that this is supposed to go. It's not about voting third party or voting for another. I mean, imagine if Lil Wayne came out and said he's voting third party and he's not voting for either of them, he'd also catch heat for that,
Yeah,
maybe even more than he's catching for voting for Trump.
that's true. And I think some of the themes that you are surfacing now are things that surface in Chingo Bling's. I think it was 2 hour live on Twitter. So basically, just talking about, I guess calling out Biden on his baggage,
Yeah,
and also in some ways also criticizing the system. So I think to your point, it's almost part of, we have two choices that are not really choices, and and so I think he makes some things that are, worth considering, thinking about it. But then he makes other statements that are clearly um, false, and that you can tell that somehow some of the misinformation or propaganda has gotten to him, and how he views what's going on right now.
yeah. It's like Chomsky says that there's certain parameters, or there's a certain dialogue that is allowed,
Hmm.
but you have to stay within the borders of that, and within those constraints, there's lively debate. There's people yelling at each other. There's back and forth about what's better and what's not, as long as it's all constrained. But the constraints are such that the conversation cannot go outside of them. So there's lively
Hmm.
debate within those, but outside of it, there's no debate at all, because it's not in the interest of the power establishment to have actual conversations about, like, again, I always go back to this, but how do we vote against war? How do we vote against the financial sector, about the powerful influences of the insurance industry? There's really no discourse on that. Uh, but going back to Chingo Bling, anything to say before I play a few minutes of this so that we can
Yeah, I think he starts getting into it a little bit. I want to say minute 2 or 5, but because there's some parts where he's just kind of. I guess this is his first time using this particular app, but it takes about minute 3 or so where he gets starts getting into where he's coming from.
Right here's good.
Sellouts. You don't care about La Raza. Um, Locutron. He says, why people mad? Because I like comment. I like posts. I leave comments up under certain posts that talk about how this bombshell news story about the Biden family. Who, if y'all follow me on Twitter, y'all know I'm not a Biden fan at all, or Kamala. I'm not a fan. I can't do it. You cannot pay me to be a Latino for Biden. I know a lot of celebrities, a lot of comedians, a lot of actors. It's the cool, safe, hip thing to do. And when you have the entire news media painting old boy, we'll just call him old boy, painting him as like orange man bad, Hitler, fascist, racist, KKK, white supremacy. Of course, if that's what you believe, if that's the channel you watch, don't nobody want no Hitler in charge. So don't nobody want no KKK in charge. Don't nobody want no Nazi in charge. So if you believe that story, if you believe that narrative, then yeah, I feel you. It's like, man, I'd rather vote for a fucking refrigerator. I'll vote for anything. I'll vote for a cup of coffee before I vote for Hitler. So I don't blame you. You know, I don't blame you. But I feel like a lot of people's realities uh, may get shattered. May get shattered because, like I say, man, if you only watch one channel, which I was guilty of for a long time, if you only watch CNN, if you only hear Russia, 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 and when you don't realize that everybody ganging up on this dude, when you don't really peep game, like, man, well, everybody said, well, the news said he was racist. Well, shit, he must be racist. Like when I see Offset and Cardi B and Plies and all these people that are like, man, how dare y'all? Like everybody that jumped on Lil Wayne, everybody jumped on Ice Cube, everybody jumped on Ice Cube, Lil Wayne, 50 Cent, all these people, they jumped on him. Oh, you sell out, whoop-de-whoop. How dare you? You know, a lot of people feel that Biden is for La Raza.
Pause it there.
A
And
lot to unpack.
yeah, he sounds like me.
You're the Chingo Bling of the East. But first of all, I would like to
Or I sound like
highlight
him. Yeah.
highlight how cool it is that my man is from H Town, so you can kind of tell how Black and Latino culture come together, in the way he talks and the way that he expresses himself.
Oh yeah, yeah. Here in South LA too, I have a lot of friends that talk just like he does.
Hmm.
I know I only played about 2 3 minutes right now, but earlier when I was listening to this, I did get the sense that he does sound a lot like me when he's offering criticism of Joe Biden and the Democrats. But I think where we the part is that I get the sense that he is defending Trump in a way. Like
Hmm.
when he said here that they're ganging up on him, and he also further on in the video he talks about how initially when Trump made those comments about Mexicans or Mexico not sending their best, sending rapists, that they took him out of context, that Trump
Yeah.
was taken out of context. And so, yeah, this is where I would disagree with his assessment. It's just that it's not that Biden isn't corrupt. It's also, but that doesn't mean that Trump isn't either. It doesn't mean that Trump is not racist. Like, it's not one or the other. And I'm surprised that someone that can articulate a very well thought out criticism of the Democratic establishment would then go to sleep and not offer the same criticism of Trump,
Hmm.
right? Like you should be able to, if you can criticize one side, then apply that same ability to analyze, criticize the other side as well. Just do it fairly out. So I'm not really sure why he's turning off that antenna or that sensor when it comes to Trump. Maybe I haven't seen the whole thing. It is 2 hours long, and I know
Yeah.
that he was that he was vehemently opposed to Trump in the beginning. So I'm not saying that he's always been like that. He even wrote that letter initially, right, to Trump.
Yeah, I know he talks about it in this video.
Yeah. What's your take?
Yeah, I think to your point is like it, and that's where is like it seems like he's been able to obviously thought about these issues and has some things to say, but then I feel that then he falls for the misinformation or the propaganda from the other side. So I think that's why I was conflicted because part of it is like, okay, it's fine if like I respect if you vote Republican or if you vote for Trump because you have your own logic, and as long as you also understand the flaws in your logic, right? Like whatever it is, but that's still who you're being called to support, or whether it's on the other side. But the thing is, then and then he kind of gets into this whole almost like conspiracy theory, like saying things that are also being pushed by the misinformation folks. So it's just kind of like that dissonance that I cannot get past, right? So,
What
tell me, what do you think? What do you agree? And then I can point out some of the things that I disagree and where I see things differently, but also be able to see when you're being told things that are not correct. And so he talks about just watching one channel, but it sounds like he himself is either watching one channel or assuming that what one channel says is what everybody from that particular perspective thinks.
and what's the misinformation campaign that you are referring to? Are you talking about him getting talking points from, say, Fox News that are pushing the investigation on the Bidens in Ukraine,
Yeah.
or what's the other one? I think that right now that's the latest one that they're pushing.
Hmm.
Is there another one?
No, I think that's the main one
That's the
because I
main
know he
one.
references talking about I guess the lost laptop and the messages that allegedly Hunter Biden had recorded or had in that um, in that laptop or whatever that it was that they found. So yeah, really not, and that's something that's still out there. I don't know how legitimate it is or not,
But you
but for him,
but you claim you think that it's misinformation though.
yes, because I think the convenient fact that it came out at this time, just days away from the election, and also not only that, but it's been a constant campaign that also that the Trump campaign, a constant effort, I meant to say, that by Trump campaign to try to make this about personal corruption and corruption of the Bidens, which is ironic given everything that he and his family are doing to benefit personally from the White House and the
Exactly.
nepotism and things like that. So it goes back to that point, like how are you criticizing Biden and Hunter and you're not criticizing and acknowledging that Trump and others at that level are doing the same.
Exactly. Yeah. So I agree with you on that. Where me and you may have a difference of opinion here is when it comes to this, what you're referring to as misinformation or propaganda.
Yeah.
Because if you look into the allegations against Biden, and if you just look at what happened in Ukraine, right? So his son that has no experience in the energy sector all of a sudden gets a board position in an energy company making over 50, I think was it like 70 or 80,000 a year, to be on that board. And then at some point, the company that he is a board member of has some contact with Biden. Now, those are the facts, right? Those are just the facts. So it shouldn't be a leap for people to understand that this is just politics as usual. It seems like Biden used his position as vice president to get his son into a good paying position, and then this
Or that his
company.
son used to get himself in a good paying position.
Right, exactly. But then Biden did meet with some of the members of that company, didn't he?
Well, I think he met. Well, that might be part of it. I know he was dealing with what was happening in the Ukraine
Right. But so
and with Russia.
yeah, so here's what I'm getting at. So this is where plausible deniability, and this is where you see politicians using it skillfully, because this is what it's about. It's about doing things that are borderline illegal, as long as you can claim that you weren't doing anything illegal. So I told you right now that Biden got his son that position at that company, and you immediately said, no, it wasn't Biden, it was his son. Perfect example of how you use plausible.
Using his name. Well, that's the thing. You're talking about families that are privileged, right? So if you've been a senator, if you're one of 100 people who are in a position to dictate policy in this country, or whether you are a son of a millionaire, billionaire who's now president, like these are people who are in world of privilege. And I think, we got exposed to this at Brown, an Ivy League institution, where that all that stuff, it comes up. That's part of the privilege, right? These people are connected because they go to those schools, because they have those businesses, because they have that money, because they have that ability,
and also because
to profit from who they are and what their family does and from their family businesses.
But also because their parents help them get to those places.
Yeah.
So I think what you're trying to say is that Biden's son got himself on that board by himself. And what
not by himself, but it could have been something like, hey, and again, I don't know the specifics, but I guess I wanted to say that what I wanted to highlight was that Hunter Biden, knowing who he was and who his dad was, he could have leveraged that. But his I'm sure his father could have said, okay, yeah, what are you interested in? And if I can help you and I can stay within the restraints, within the legal, I can support you. I can set up a meeting for you, do what you would expect a normal parent to do.
But he's not a normal parent. He's the vice president of the U.S., right? So once he starts doing that, then the company, it's in their interest to have Hunter Biden in that board, because it means that they may, it's not guaranteed, but they may get access to Biden. And then wasn't Biden, this is from what I've read, wasn't Biden, this is the whole thing that Trump was investigating, whether or not Biden put pressure on a prosecutor to drop an investigation into that company. I think it's called Burisma. And so I don't know if that is something that can be verified as being factual. The part where Biden was putting pressure on the prosecutor, because I think that's what Trump was trying to get someone to investigate in Ukraine. I'm not even worried about that. I just going based on the facts. You have the son of the vice president in a board of a company in the Ukraine, and so he's only there for access. So let's not kid ourselves. And Biden is very likely that he was involved in it as well. Because why? Because I know these politicians are corrupt, and they'll use whatever it is that they can to get an advantage, as long as they have plausible deniability. So what you run into here is you're probably not going to find any evidence against Biden, and there won't be much for people to be able to draw a concrete decision, or even to be able to accuse him with 100% certainty, because it just, things don't work that way. If you're a politician, you do things in such a way that you can have plausible deniability. So with Chingo Bling here, he is somewhat saying that, but then it seems like he's then forgetting about the fact that Trump does that as well. That's what these guys do. And the only difference is that who is going to back you when some of these things get exposed? Will the mainstream media want to investigate you, or will they try to censor it? And it looks like in the case of Biden, they would rather not talk about that. If you start investigating Biden, and if you start investigating everything he did, you probably could find some evidence of some wrongdoing, but you would need a lot of resources and a lot of people actually interested in getting to the bottom of this. But if the mainstream media is not interested, then you're not going to get much information. And whoever does present actual information against Biden on this, they'll just discredit that individual, or they'll censor that individual. And so, but it doesn't mean that Biden is more corrupt than Trump, or that he's less. They're both corrupt. And so I would have, if Chingo Bling was like saying that instead of kind of defending Trump, then I would have been more in line with what he's saying.
That's true. But I guess then the question is, so what does a person in that position, if Chingo Bling would have been consistent, like you call them, then what are his choices as it relates to who he votes for in
Well, yeah,
during
well,
this time?
I think once you come to terms with the reality of the situation, then I think one of the things you can really say is, look, there's really no choice. We have nothing but two bad choices here. Ideally, it'd be better to vote for someone else, but if you vote for someone else based on the way that the establishment works, is it's almost like you could make the case that it's like throwing away your vote, right? At this late in the game, if you want to really push back against both of these candidates, you have to do the real work of doing that on the ground at the community level, organizing and trying to push progressive candidates or whatever candidate you want. But even that's really difficult. So
Yeah.
the reality is we're stuck with two bad choices. And he could say, I'm choosing this one guy because of X, Y, and Z, despite all the reasons, all of the things that I don't like about his candidate. But it also doesn't mean that I like this other candidate either. I just, right. So the picking the lesser of the two evils, if that's the way that he's framing it, then that's cool with me, because it tells me that he understands the reality of things. But if he's framing it in the sense that, oh, these Democrats don't represent us, and why are they all attacking Trump, and almost like making it seem like Trump is the victim of all these attacks, when in a way that he is, but it gave me the impression that he's defending Trump. I think you got that impression as well.
Yes. So it's interesting to see how all of this plays out with all these celebrities, and of course, now we'll see what happens the day after the election. And I know it's going to take at least a few days, possibly a few weeks before we have some final results.
Yeah. And then we'll see what the aftermath is. If Trump wins, we'll see how hard they come up against these guys, come after these guys.
What do you mean if Trump wins?
Yeah, if Trump wins, then Ice Cube, Lil Wayne, Chingo Bling, anyone that that is perceived to have given Trump any support that painted Trump in a positive way with the followers of that celebrity, then we'll see what the backlash is against these guys.
Yeah, think there'll be backlash, but I think also they'll be with the winning party, right? So I think that will get them some of the spoils from that endorsement, right? So whether it's access, whether it's resources to pet projects or pet causes or roles and things like that. So I think it's part of the political game, and I think that's part of what it is, right? I think it is about aligning yourself with people who you think are going to be in power, who are going to be able to provide you with opportunities and also address the things that you need and that you care about. And I think, yes, a lot of it unfortunately is driven by ego, and then when you think about it, how difficult it is to run for office, like who really wants to go through that? And unfortunately, sometimes it may part of the reason too that we also have bad choices is that there's a lot of good people who are not going to run for office because they have other things going on. So then you're left with what you have, but then you also need good people in politics to do the hard work, to build the relationships, and to help make the decisions that are necessary. So from my perspective, I also see things from that is a very human thing, things that happen within families, right? Trying to help each other, trying to call in a favor so that your kid or that your nephew or somebody can get a job. So it's things that as social creatures come very naturally to us because that's how we, in essence, evolved and survived and became the dominant species.
No, that's true. That's a good point. And these guys are also taking a risk, because if if Biden wins, then I think they're off the hook.
Yeah,
If
because there'll be just a bleep.
yeah, but if Trump wins, there'll be attention on them. But not only that, then they're gonna have to come to terms within a year or two that they were duped, because Trump's not gonna do anything for them.
Mm-hmm.
That's the part that they're missing. That Trump, yeah, Biden may not care, right? You can reference the '94 crime bill. You can reference all his bad policies. It doesn't mean that Trump cares about them and that Trump's going to do anything to help them. Trump just wants their support right now, and then Trump will discard them after he wins the presidency.
Mm-hmm.
So, so that's the risk that they're taking, and that's the risk that they're taking because they're not being vocal about this. They're very good at criticizing the Democrats, but then they turn on the mute button when it comes to any criticism of Trump, or to at least do it proportionately. So that's my take on it. Any other words on this before we wrap it up?
No, I think we talked about a lot of issues, and we'll see what is installed in the future for us as it relates to the results of the 2020 election.
Sounds good. By the way, earlier, I don't know if you noticed, but when you started talking, I put this on mute and then I push play because I had him in a really bad still shot where one of his eyes was closed and the other one was open. So I couldn't do him like that, right? I would never want somebody to, if I ever make it on video and someone's analyzing one of my videos, for them to put me like that for minutes. So I had to put him in another one that didn't look as bad.
Good eye. See, that's the kind of respectful treatment you will get here at the Brown Perspective. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Feel free to comment, like our conversations, and we are also on Twitter and the Instagram at Brown Perspective TV. So connect with us and let's continue to have these conversations.
Nos vemos.
Ciao.